Well, with me now, the former Liberal Democrat MP, Dr. Evan Harris, and the senior politics editor of the new Statesman, Mehdi Hasan. Before we get into the coalition's woes or joys, just the process by which all this stuff of the last week was got, perfectly satisfied with journalists posing as constituents?
Well, I have a very high threshold for criticising the free press because the alternative is so much worse. But I think there probably will be a complaint that there was no public interest in most of the comments that were obtained, because it's just asking people under the basis of a private conversation what their politics is, and that could have just been done in a straightforward interview. And in the case of Vince Cable, of course, he actually requested that the remarks not be published. So on a human basis, that was a breach of confidentiality. On a journalistic basis, it's agreeing that it's off the record and then putting it on the record, which is pretty poor practice.
Well, Mehdi, you're the journalist here.
Well, I think we journalists are probably the only people who are about as unpopular as people like Evan, politicians like Evan, and it's because of behaviour like this, frankly. I can't say that I agree with the Telegraph's practice. There was no public interest whatsoever to pose undercover. It was a fishing trip. They went along with some tape recorders, pretending to be constituents, and record whatever we can get, whatever high-level gossip that we can get. Forget WikiLeaks. I mean, there's been all this debate. The Telegraph and all the newspapers have been criticising WikiLeaks for publishing, in some cases, allegations of war crimes. And here we have, Vince Cable being recorded talking about his nuclear option, etc., etc. Even the Murdoch stuff, which it was important to find out about, that wasn't the Telegraph's aim. That's a retrospective justification. He volunteered that information.
Well, OK, what about the grief and joy of coalition? I mean, we're not used to it. It's the first majority government you or I have ever lived under.
What, a coalition, a government with the majority support of the public?
62%. We've never lived with anybody who's had even more than 50%.
No, and I'm a great believer in coalitions. My problem with this particular coalition is the manner of the coalition itself. I think there's a lot of people who admired the Liberal Democrats from afar or voted for the Liberal Democrats who were rather troubled over the last few months at the way in which the coalition was formed and the way in which Nick Clegg and David Cameron, to look at that picture behind you, it should have been a marriage of convenience, to quote one Lib Dem supporting commentator, but it looks like much more than that. It looks